Nothing to find. The Bible tells us in St. John 14, verse 30, "The prince of this world cometh, and have nothing in me." What an intriguingly powerful statement. This Satan, whose main aim whilst Jesus was here was his destruction, with all his planning, all his scheming, and all of his conniving, could still find nothing in Jesus. But what does this text really mean? What was he looking for? Well, the answer is clear. He was looking for the same thing in Jesus that he found in Adam: disobedience to the will of his Father. The main purpose of his temptation of Jesus in the wilderness was not to show how long he could tempt Jesus for, neither was it to show how powerful he was, or to demonstrate his persistence. It was quite simply to find even the smallest piece of disobedience in Jesus. He knew that if he could find that in Jesus, regardless of how small, he knew he had Jesus hooked. Indeed, Satan remembered how he had beguiled the first Adam into disobeying God's will. He was vouching on achieving the same thing with the last Adam, Jesus. But all praise to the King of Kings, for he could find nothing in Jesus. Listen, it's not that we are unable to serve God well, or that we are unable to praise and worship him. Neither is it that we are not proud to be called Christians. It's the fact that we all too often overlook seemingly small areas of disobedience to the will of God in our lives, not really realizing that that's all it takes for Satan to have leverage or a foothold in our lives to hook us in. When an angered God told the children of Israel, "I delight not in the blood of bullocks," or "To what purpose is the multitude of your sacrifices unto me? I am full of the burnt offerings of rams and the fat of fed beasts. I delight not in the blood of your bullocks, or of your lambs or your goats." Isaiah 1 and 11. What was God really saying? Well, what he was saying was, your service outside of obedience means nothing to me. You see, that is what Satan wants. All he wants is our service for God, void of our obedience to God. One of the greatest acts that we can ever show God is our act of obedience. That's why Jesus declared in John 14, verse 15, "If you love me, keep my commandments." While God requires our obedience, Satan relishes our disobedience. But here's something else. Obedience to God can never be achieved outside of love for God. Satan knows this, and thus came fishing right where Jesus was. In St. Matthew chapter 4, we see Satan coming at Jesus, fishing, trying to find some element of disobedience in Jesus' life. What was he fishing for? What was he trying to put his hooks into? Like I said before, disobedience. He knew that whatever Jesus was to achieve could never be achieved outside of total obedience to God. Listen, our talk of God is good, but our obedience to God is so much better. Your obedience to God gives everything to God and leaves nothing for Satan. Your obedience means certain victory. God will always back a woman or a man who is willing to obey his will. The Apostle Paul in Philippians 4 and verse 8 wrote, "Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. Understand then that your thoughts will ultimately become your behavior, and your behavior over a period of time will ultimately become your lifestyle. You, me, we are our thoughts. Show me your actions, and I'll tell you what your thoughts were. When Satan poked, prodded, teased, tempted, abused, and insulted Jesus, he could find nothing that belonged to him in Jesus. For clearly, disobedience is his property, not God's. Satan could find nothing in Jesus in the wilderness of temptation. He could find nothing in him in the Garden of Gethsemane. He could find nothing in him whilst he hung half naked on the cross. Can the same be said of you? Search yourself even as you listen to this audio. Is there anything in your attitude, in your behavior, in your life that gives place to the enemy's hook? Judas was able to betray Jesus so cruelly because when Satan came to him, he found something that belonged to him in him, greed and pride, which ultimately led to disobedience. That was all Satan needed to catch Judas. Yet the same could not be said of dear brother Job. For when Satan went fishing in his life, he could find nothing that belonged to him there in Job's life. Not in brother Job's speech, not in his attitude or his behavior. Nothing to hook into. Satan is always fishing, my friends. Make sure that when he comes with his hook to you, he can find nothing in you.